Okay, if you have more questions about employment-related matters, staff and associates, come talk to us. I'm going to move on to the next issue. We already spoke about it or heard about it from Al and George and Susan. It's the lease. Make sure that you don't have things like a demolition clause in there. Make sure that when you sell your practice, you're still not on the hook as a personal guarantor, like for the next 20 years. Make sure that there's a provision in there, and this is tough to get, but we've been successful at getting it, that if you wanted to, you could transfer to another dentist the lease without getting the landlord's consent. Because landlords are just brutal.
Let me scare you quickly about landlords. They're nice human beings. Some of them are companies, some of them are people. Two things. One, they want to pay for nothing and make the tenants pay for everything. And number two, they like to collect personal guarantees. They don't want risk. They're a lawyer's best friend. They don't like risk.
David, what's a personal guarantee, just in case they don't know?
Personal guarantee. You've got your dental practice through a professional corporation. So you sign the lease, Dr. John Dentistry Professional Corporation. That's the tenant. But what if you stop working and there's no money coming to the corporation? Then suddenly there's a tenant that might not be able to pay the bills. So the landlord says, I want you, Dr. John, or whoever the principal is behind the corporation, to guarantee that if the company doesn't pay the rent and any associated fees, you, the people, have to pay the fees. So it's a personal guarantee like you might see with perhaps banking transactions or equipment leases, things like that.
So just to wrap up the issue about leases, because we've been talking about it, check it. Make sure you've got good term, good renewal terms, no demolition clauses. Ability to assign to another dentist is preferential, though hard to get. And no hidden clauses like if you try to transfer, you owe the landlord 1.5% of the purchase price. Because we've seen those, and those are absolutely ridiculous.
Leases, this has been the shortest talk ever on leases. Just to let you know, for a maximization standpoint, you heard it before. If you can improve a lease prior to sale, it can greatly enhance the value of the sale. Here's why. There was a practice we worked on, I think it was about half a year ago now, maybe a little longer, valued at about $1 million. But there was the dentist was prepared to accept about $850,000. Had a good relationship with the dentist that was going to take over. They'd known each other in the past, and they offered a discount. Very nice. The problem was the landlord. There was a demolition clause. And the landlord said, when we started doing our due diligence, you know what? The owner's been talking that they want to knock down the building in a couple years and convert it to condos. This was in the city of Toronto. The practice, everyone walked away. Practice could not be sold. Went for, I think it was just under $550,000. So an appraised practice at $1 million, where there was an offer on the table signed for $850,000, ended up being sold in a fire sale for just over $500,000 because of a demolition clause. And in fact, in the same lease, a demolition clause, it says these are considered acts of demolition. If we want you to leave, if you want to sell your practice, and it was a whole laundry list of crazy things that had nothing to do with demolishing the building, but could be acts of demolition, enough that a landlord could kick you out on, and it was 1 day notice. No bank wanted to touch the funding of that transaction, and it ended up being self-financed.
Yeah.
Because there's that much risk. So
I mean, I'd like to attribute some of the purchase price reduction to us. We did a good job, but
right.
It wasn't all demolition clause. But.
No, the lawyers do advocate on your behalf, and there's a lot of other conditions in leases. Leases these days are going 40. We just got one last night, 61 pages. So it's not a traditional lease from the 1970s where someone had bought a standard form from Grandin Toy, and they gave you a 3-page document. I think you, sir, had said you had a lease that was only a couple of pages long.
Seen it in 40 years.
You haven't seen your lease in 40 years.
No,
These
I have like one paragraph
renewals. Yeah.
All right. Well, they're a lot scarier these days because lawyers have gotten involved on behalf of landlords, and lawyers have made themselves a lot of work, and now they're big and scary, and they haunt my dreams.
Yeah.
So should we be afraid of the landlord or the lawyer?
You should be afraid. You should be afraid of the purchaser's lawyer, who's going to say this. Who's not going to let their client purchase your practice because your lease is bad, or be afraid of the financing requirements. So it's not what you have right now. Think 3 steps ahead. What you have now, I'm assuming, is working for you. You have a smile on your face, but it's what's 3 steps down the road. Put yourself in the position of the purchaser, because that's who you're going to transfer to.